Hello and welcome to Pickleball Therapy, the podcast dedicated to your pickleball improvement with a focus on your mind. My name is Tony Roig. I'm your host of the weekly podcast. It's a pleasure to be with you. Hope you're doing well. This week's regular episode, we're going to be talking about the potential for mental frustration from wanting the end goal now. And we're going to be diving into how some of this is fed by what you see out there in social media, or you see in posts and things. I'm going to explain to you why that can be potentially damaging to your experience as a player, and why it can lead to frustration because you're setting yourself up for disappointment potentially if you follow that approach to your improvement. And then I'm going to give you, during this process, I should say, I'm going to give you a more holistic way of thinking about it and a way that will actually get the job done for you. As we dive into the podcast, our fall clinic starts like now. You know, if you're listening to it Friday, it starts I believe the clinic goes live on the 20th, which should be tomorrow. So basically it's live now. If you haven't already signed up for the clinic, I believe you can still get a ticket. It's free and online. So go to betterpickleball.com and get your ticket for the clinic. Highly recommend you check it out. It's a very engaging, it's a new format we're using. We made it very streamlined this year so that you can get the information on demand. And then we have some live sessions. We have 3 of them to make sure that you can find one that fits your schedule. So highly recommend you check it out and learn more about this awesome sport. All right, let's dive into the main subject of this. And here's what's happening, right? And why I wanted to do this podcast, this episode. So there's this idea that I keep seeing pop up, right? Whether it's other voices out there in the social media world, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I don't really do a lot of X or Twitter, but it's basically Reddit, things like that. And it's this idea that like there's a certain player you want to be, right? Meaning like there's a fill in the blank, right? Blank player. So you should try and be a blank player. And it sounds great. I mean, wow. Okay. Yeah, let's do it. I'm going to be a blank player and I'm going to be what I want. All my dreams will come true when I become a blank player. There's oftentimes, not a lot of clarity on what that is and how you get there. Right. I mean, there may be some like rough sketches around it, but not a real like, okay, I can go from where I am now to this blank player following this path. And what happens is the risk with that, right, with that approach or that way of thinking or introducing that way of thinking is that it can lead to frustration, because frustration is simply unmet expectations, right? So you set an expectation for yourself that, okay, I'm going to become blank player. And that's the thing. That's the key. Okay. And then 2 months later or whenever, you're like, okay, I was supposed to become a blank player. Am I a blank player? What does that mean to be a blank player? And all these, and so, and now you're frustrated because it's so amorphous, right? So how do you become the blank player and what does that even mean? What I'm going to suggest to you throughout this podcast is that there's a way of looking at it that is much more concrete. It'll allow you to set expectations that are more reasonable and frankly, more relevant too, right? Meaning like wherever you're at right now, it's going to be just about finding that next step along your path, right? And what's the next thing for me to do? And then, talk about just a different way of approaching your process, which if you do it that way, the way that I'm going to propose, you'll minimize, can't say avoid, right? Because we're all different, but you'll definitely minimize the risks that you're going to feel frustrated or disappointed in yourself engaging in this beautiful sport and your growth in it. Okay. So let's start from this premise. Okay. Let me lay it out for you. So pickleball is about as complex activity as you can engage in. And I want to say that again, because I think it's very powerful and I'm going to go into some detail, but I want you to understand this. Pickleball is about as complex an activity as you can engage in. I'll let that sink in for a second. And I'm going to give you some details. Okay. Pickleball requires physical movement. Okay. That seems like a no big deal. It's a huge deal and includes your whole body. Okay. Video gaming, for instance, or chess playing fine activities, right? Card playing, things like that, do not require physical movement. They do not require balance, mobility, none of that, right? Tracking balls, things like that. None of that's involved in those activities. Again, no criticism. They're great activities, but they don't involve that. Pickleball requires interacting with objects moving through space. That includes the pickleball, your partner, and the other players, as they all move through space during a rally. Okay. You can compare that to bowling, static, golf, fairly static, right? Once the ball is hit and it lands, it's just sitting there. And also like board games like we were talking about, right? They don't have that dynamic to them. Okay. So that's more taxing on you. Pickleball requires puzzle solving. Okay. Now that's the same as a chess match or a card game. So you're having to do basically the same activities that a bridge player, canasta player, a chess player, right? Or anybody else trying to solve a crossword player, or is trying to solve a puzzle. You're doing the same thing when you play a rally, while you're moving physically and having to interact with objects moving through space. In pickleball, you are competing against other persons who are also vying for the win. Okay, compare that to skiing. Something like skiing, right? Where it's you against the mountain or the course, right? That you're going down. Fine activity, but it's not, like the other skiers aren't throwing obstacles in your way as you're trying to go down the mountain, right? It's more challenging when you have other players, other participants intentionally trying to stop you from accomplishing what you're trying to do. So that's another layer of complexity. To execute on the solution that you want, you need the mechanical components from moving your body through space relative to other objects moving through space. Again, take a moment here, guys. I mean, that's a complex thing. Okay? You're trying to solve a puzzle in motion relative to other things that are in motion at the same time. And then the last thing is that after all that, right, you still need to hit the ball to the spot that will accomplish what you want. Now, again, compare that to like chess or card games where there's no mechanical layer, right? If you want to move a pawn or if you want to play a card, you just put it down. It's not like you have to put it down exactly, a certain way. It has to land a certain way or like things like that, right? Pickleball does. So when you think about the totality of the sport that you're engaging in, it is about as complex an activity as you can get. Now, there are other sports like, tennis, things like that, right? That also have complexity like pickleball. Okay. So there are other activities that are complex, but when you look at the height of complex activities, or the tier, I should say, of like activities, pickleball is in the top complexity in terms of all of the pieces that are involved. And that's beautiful. I'm going to tell you, that's what keeps you coming back, is the complexity. Now, that's also what can frustrate you because I'm not getting all this. Okay. It's pretty complex. So let's take a little bit of a breather there and give ourselves a break. But that complexity is what makes it so dang interesting. Now, to use the word dang there. So dang interesting is the complexity. It's a different puzzle every time, different players step out on the court, how you're feeling that day, where you're at mechanically in the game, right? How you're seeing things, the strategy, the way you're understanding it, the angles, all of that stuff, all jumbled together to make this beautiful game. So embrace the complexity of it, but understand it in terms of how you want to engage with it as you improve as a player. Now, this is where I think, we get into trouble with this idea of, the trying to fit into like this blank player description, right? It's a very complex sport, and I'm trying to become whatever this blank player is with these very broad stroke ideas. A couple of things, right? One is not everybody needs to play pickleball the same way. Okay, there's different ways to come at the sport. I've had several conversations recently with other coaches and other, influential people in the sport. And we've had this conversation about how, like you can come at the game, soft game, hard game, combination, right? 50-50, things like that. And you see it even at the pro level. This last weekend, I don't think anybody had the Kawamoto sisters, the twins, winning the PPA women's division in this stacked tournament with the other major teams in there. Annalie Waters, Anna Bright, who the Kawamoto sisters beat. Georgia Johnson and Tyra Black, who the Kawamoto sisters beat. right? Now, do the Kawamoto sisters have the tools to win? Obviously they do. Do they play exactly the same way as Annalie and Anna? No, they do not, because they don't play with as much power. They use power, but they use more of a soft game, dinking, resetting. It was a clinic in that. So there's different ways of coming at the sport. So whenever you hear like this, these quick soundbite blank player stuff, be careful with it, because first of all, is that for you? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you fit that mold, maybe you don't. Okay. But even then, even if you fit the mold, where are you along the process, right, of getting to that blank player position, right? It just doesn't, maybe you're closer, maybe you're not. And, I talked about this in a episode, it was a couple weeks ago or last week, talked about, mimic coaching and mimicry coaching and some of the risks with that. And, this idea that basically, do what I do, right? So this is what I do and it works for me. So do exactly what I do. I'm going to suggest that's not the best approach. Why don't you find out what is going to work best for you and do that? And the way to do that is by knocking down dominoes one at a time. Okay. And this is the part that's really important to understand. You're in a complex environment. Forget about trying to meet some thing you saw that said something you're supposed to do in an abstract sense, right? Instead, understand you're in a complex environment and then find the next step for you. What's the next step for you? Because that's what matters, right? Not the theory, not the noise, not the sound bites. If you care about your game and you want to improve your game, it's all about what's next for you. And I'll give you guys, listen, this is the stuff that I know, so I'm going to tell you about it because we built it, right? But I'm going to tell you why we built it. It's called the Pickleball system. It was called a system because it is in fact a system, and it has everything outlined in order, right? So basically you have, let's say 1 through 6, right? One of the wellness checks is 1 through 6. So what you got to do is, do you meet number 1? If you meet number 1, excellent. Let's move on to number 2. If you meet number 2, thumbs up. Let's go to number 3. Oh, number 3, I need some work there. You don't have to worry about 4, 5, and 6. And you don't have to worry about whether 6 is more important than 3. No, because we've done that. And so that 3 is where you got to be. And there it is. Simple pimple, right? And so, you're not wondering is this for me? Is it not for me? It's not vague, right? It's a very clear, do this, right? And if you're doing it, great, then move on to the next one. If you're not doing it, hang out there until you're doing it and then move on to the next one and then move on to the next one. And that's how you're going to improve as a pickleball player. One domino at a time, folks. You cannot go to the end. And this is where, I think frustration builds in as well, is this idea that, not only is there a vague thing that I'm supposed to do, I want it now, right? The way it's presented is just do this, just become this player, right? What does that mean? Right. And even if you haven't read about it, but you're thinking that way, I just need to play like this other player at my club, or I have a vision of what I need to play like. That's frustration built in, right there. Right. You can't go from where you are now to that, in a Superman big jump, where you jump over the building and just get there. It's not life, not real life. So if you want to get to where you want to go as a player, meaning you want to play better, right? You want to understand the game better. You want to feel more confident. You want, your partners to look at you and go, oh my God, that kind of stuff is great. How do you do that? One domino at a time, one step at a time, just take that one step, right? What step? The step that's right for you. And there's not one step that's right for everybody. Now, there is an order of progression and priorities and things like that. That makes sense. That's why we built a system. That's why we could build a system, because there's a logic to this game. There's a way that it's put together that makes sense. And if you listen to the special episode, it's like the car, right? There's a order to which these parts go together. You don't start with the alternator when you don't have an engine block in the car yet, right? Doesn't make sense. Same with pickleball, right? You start with the big picture items, you work down there and you get better at those. And then later on, there's all kinds of stuff that you can keep on adding to your game. But that's how you'll improve. And, what I want to leave you with is this idea. If you're on an improvement journey, okay, and most of you listening to this podcast are on an improvement journey. If you're on an improvement journey in your pickleball, then remember that you're playing a complex sport, right? A very complex sport be wary of soundbitey kind of things that sound great. They sound great. When I read them, I'm like, whoa, let's go. I like it. That's what I want. But what are we talking about, right? Be careful with those and, put them under the light a little bit and you'll be like, oh, I don't know how to do that. And then find the domino or the step that's right for you, right? This next thing that's right for you. And if we can help you with that, we'd love to. Our pickleball system class is opening, I think, in a week or two. If you're listening to it at the time this drops, if not, you can always send us an email if you happen upon this podcast later on. But that's what we do, and we'd love to do it for you if you're open to it. Inside our pickleball system, it's the best coaching program, bar none, in pickleball. So happy to help you if we can. If you're not interested in doing the system, that is perfectly fine too. But find the step that's right for you. Tackle that one, then take the next one, then take the next one. That is how you will become the pickleball player that probably is already somewhere inside you. Just got to let him out or her out by doing this process, and avoid the frustration of the soundbite, the frustration of trying to get to the end right now, because you understand as an adult, that's just not how things work. I hope you enjoyed this week's podcast. I hope to see some of you at our clinic it's like this week, next week. And then I think at the end of the month, we have our live events. So I'll be live there answering questions and things like that. So I'd love to see you there if you're interested in your improvement journey. And if you want to take the next step with us to the system, that would be awesome. We'll see you inside our coaching calls then. As always, if you have a minute, please consider rating and reviewing the podcast and share it with your friends. Remember, if you enjoy the podcast, they probably will too. And if your friend's on an improvement journey, this is pretty timely. If you want to share it with them as soon as you can so they take advantage of this free and online clinic that we have going on right now. Be well, and I'll see you next time if I don't see you inside the clinic. Be well.